Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Tobit, the first chapter. And concerning the book of Tobit, it does, based on the accounts in there, take place over a span, right, of a good period of time. But basically, the bulk of the Assyrian Empire, you have Tobit, which is one of the captives, right, of the Northern Kingdom that is carried away to Assyria. And he dwells there, for a period of time, right, even having children and so on in there. And so the book of Tobit spans all the way up until when we get to the 14th chapter, the destruction of Nineveh, okay, which was overthrown by the Babylonians, the Medes, and their allies. So just a bit of background here. When you go into the book of Tobit, let's actually read a few verses and then we'll get into that. So it says here, the book of the words of Tobit, the son of Tobiel, the son of Ananiel, the son of Aduel, the son of Gabiel, of the seed of Asael, of the tribe of Naphtali. Now, in the book of Tobit, some of the words or names, due to the Greek transliteration, are spelt differently. Okay, but you can still piece together, right, who and who it's referring to and so on. So it says here, who in the time of Enemesser, king of the Assyrians, was led captive out of Tishbe, which is at the right hand of that city, which is called properly Naphtali, in Galilee above Assur, which is Asher. Now, the Enemesser, right, is who we know as Shalmaneser, right? But it's important to make a distinction here, because Shalmaneser is a throne name. You have Shalmaneser the second, the third, the fifth, right? So Shalmaneser is a throne name, and here you'll see it says Enemesser, right, as you go through. But as we go through Tobit, the first chapter, even though it doesn't attribute the names, the actual names of who it is, the throne name used for these Assyrian kings, it's important to decipher when it's talking about one king versus another, because throughout the first chapter he recounts, and when he refers to Enemesser, it refers to different Assyrian kings, okay, before we get to Sennacherib. And so just a bit of background on that. So I'm going to pull up here. This is Tiglath-Pileser, which was one of the Assyrian kings during the time right up leading into the time of their conquest of the Levant. So we know that the Northern Kingdom ended up getting deported out of their land. Okay, and that was started by Shalmaneser V and finished by Sargon II. Okay, which when you look into it, they say that was Shalmaneser's brother. So you had Tiglath-Pileser III, and he actually started deporting. Okay, when he conquered and made his way into the Levant, he started deporting parts of the Northern Kingdom to Assyria, and this was before years later the actual Shalmaneser V besieged Samaria, and then destroyed it, and then deported the bulk, if not all, but the bulk, because there were still remnants of them left, of the Northern Kingdom to different parts of Assyria. All right, so that deportation didn't start with Shalmaneser V. It actually started with Tiglath-Pileser III, which we'll see an account of that as well. So you had Tiglath-Pileser III, and as we're looking on here on the right side, his descendants, you have Shalmaneser V as his successor. But under issue, you see there's Sargon II, which is a question mark, because some people say that he usurped the throne. He came up in there, but to try and legitimatize his reign, he tried to feign himself to be a part of the bloodline, saying he was the son of Tiglath-Pileser, or the brother of Shalmaneser V. But anyway, you have Shalmaneser V that succeeds Tiglath-Pileser. He's the one that begins the siege. And let's see here. So it says Shalmaneser V was the king of the Neo-Assyrian Empire from 727 BC to his deposition and death in 722 BC. Though Shalmaneser V's brief reign is poorly known from contemporary sources, he remains known for the conquest of Samaria and the fall of the kingdom of Israel, though the conclusion of that campaign is sometimes attributed to his successor, Sargon II, instead. So they say he died after the siege started, and Sargon finished it. So after Shalmaneser the fifth, you have Sargon II. Okay. It says here, Sargon II was the king of the Neo-Assyrian Empire from 722 BC to his death in battle in 705, probably the son of Tiglath-Pileser III. Sargon is generally believed to have become king after overthrowing Shalmaneser V, probably his brother. He is typically considered the founder of a new dynastic line in the Sargonid dynasty. And after Sargon II, you have his son, Sennacherib, who ends up coming on the scene, right? So from Tiglath-Pileser, right, you have Shalmaneser V, Sargon II, and then Sennacherib, all right, who was the son of Sargon. So now going back to the book of Tobit, Tobit refers here to a Assyrian king. Now it says Shalmaneser here, but keep in mind the scriptures sometimes tend to do that, right, where they attribute, there's a generic or typical throne name of certain types of kings that are used for them, right? So for example, when it says Enemeser here, which the proper transliteration would have been Shalmaneser, it in fact could not be referring to like Shalmaneser V himself, right? This could be referring to Tiglath-Pileser III or any of the other Assyrian kings after. Okay, and an example of that and what I'm referring to here is here when we go into the book of Daniel, the 9th chapter. This is Daniel 9:1. It says, in the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, of the seed of the Medes, which was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans, right? And now before we go any further, one, Ahasuerus, this name here, is also used in the book of Esther, right, to refer to Xerxes. But we know that this Daniel 9:1 is not speaking about the Persian king Xerxes, right, who's referred to as Ahasuerus in the scriptures, because here it says of the seed of the Medes, and we know that Xerxes, the one who ends up marrying Esther, was a Persian. He wasn't a Mede. Okay, so this is in fact referring to a Median king, right? This Ahasuerus, which in secular history he is known as Cyaxares. I believe Cyaxares II. But the scriptures attribute the name Ahasuerus to him. So now if we click in here, right, if we go into dictionaries and we look up Ahasuerus over here, you'll see it says there are 3 kings designated by this name in scripture. Cyaxares the first. Okay. It says the father of Darius the Mede, mentioned in Daniel 9:1. This was probably the Cyaxares the first, known by this name in profane history, the king of Media and conqueror of Nineveh. And we'll read about him in Tobit, the 14th chapter as well. In fact, let's go there for more points on the point that's being made here. So when you go all the way down to Tobit, Tobit, what's that, 14 and 15, you'll see here it says, but before he died, he heard of the destruction of Nineveh, which was taken by Nabuchodonosor and Ahasuerus. And before his death, he rejoiced over Nineveh, right? And the Ahasuerus here is referring to Cyaxares. Okay, Cyaxares the first. So you'll see here, there's certain names that the scriptures attribute to certain kings, but it's not always going to be their exact name as they're known in secular history, right? So continuing here, you have one individual in the scriptures who is referred to as Ahasuerus, and this is dealing with Cyaxares the first, right? It says the king mentioned in Ezra 4 and 6, probably Cambyses of profane history or secular history, the son and successor of Cyrus. He is also referred to as Ahasuerus when you read in Ezra 4 and 6. And it's the same name here, but it's really more like a title, right? It's how the scriptures refer to the Medo-Persian kings, right? That's like their title, like how you have Pharaoh, okay? And then lastly, it says here, the son of Darius Hystaspes, the king named in the book of Esther, he ruled over the kingdoms of Persia, Media, and Babylonia, going into Xerxes. He is also referred to as Ahasuerus by the scriptures. So this is an example to show you in terms of the wording of the names or titles of certain heathen kings by the scriptures. It doesn't always differentiate and tell you like, oh, this is Cyaxares, this is Cambyses, this is Xerxes, right? They're all, the title that's attributed to them is Ahasuerus. So if you don't look into it, you may think Ahasuerus is a specific name of a particular person and wonder, wait, why is it saying in Daniel 9 and 1 he's of the seed of the Medes, but in Esther he is a Persian, and because it's referring to different people. But you need to use the context of the verses to give you that clarity so you can know, okay, when it says Ahasuerus here, it's really referring to this king in secular history. So with that being said, when we go back to Tobit chapter 1, and it mentions Enemeser, which in other translations will say Shalmaneser, it's not always referring about Shalmaneser the fifth in secular history. All right. So in Tobit 1 and 2, when it says here, who in the time of Enemeser, king of the Assyrians, was led captive out of Tishbe, referring to his people, this Enemeser is actually dealing with Tiglath-Pileser III. And when we go into the book of 2 Kings, the 15th chapter, 15 and 29, right, this is the account of it. So it says here, in the days of Pekah, king of Israel, came Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, and took Ijon and Abel Beth-Maacah and Janoah and Kadesh and Hazor and Gilead and Galilee and all the land of Naphtali, and carried them captive to Assyria. See, so even before Shalmaneser V came in there and did what he did, you had Tiglath-Pileser that actually deported, right? It says he carried them to Assyria. Okay. And then you go on into verse 30, right? And Hoshea, the son of Elah, made a conspiracy, and then so on and so forth. Okay. And so that, lining that up with Tobit 1 and 2, that's how Tobit ends up over there in Nineveh, all right, which is the capital of Assyria. It says here, I, Tobit, have walked all the days of my life in the ways of truth and justice. I did many alms deeds to my brethren and my nation, who came with me to Nineveh into the land of the Assyrians, right, being that they were carried captive over there. And when I was in mine own country, so back when he was in the land of Israel, being but young, all the tribe of Naphtali, my father fell from the house of Jerusalem, which was chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, that all the tribes should sacrifice there. So basically his father went in, he didn't go in the way of what was right. Right? He didn't stick to the right path. Where the temple of the habitation of the Most High was consecrated and built for all ages. Now all the tribes which together revolted, and the house of my father Naphtali sacrificed unto the heifer Baal. This is referring to the account when Rehoboam, you had the separation with Jeroboam and Rehoboam, and based on Rehoboam's response to the people divided, right? And then you had the northern kingdom go under Jeroboam, who ended up building the heifer, which is the animals. I think it was the cows, in the northern kingdom, and causing the northern tribes to worship them and saying these are the kings that the gods that delivered you out of Egypt. So don't go back to Jerusalem. Just sacrifice and worship them here, which the Lord really, 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 really hated. But not every individual of the northern kingdom did that. You had a bulk of them that started going off and doing that. But as you see, Tobit here being one of those that did not fall away onto that idolatry. But I alone went often to Jerusalem at the feasts, as it was ordained unto all the people of Israel by an everlasting decree. So he's saying, while they worshipped that heifer, I would still go to Jerusalem according to the law, having the first fruits and tenths of increase with that which was first shorn, and them gave I at the altar to the priests, the children of Aaron. The first tenth part of all increase I gave to the sons of Aaron, who ministered at Jerusalem. Another tenth part I sold away, and went and spent it every year at Jerusalem. So of his increase, right, the first tenth part he gave to the priest. The other tenth he sold it and spent the money at Jerusalem. And the third I gave on, which the law mentions that, right? Like you can convert your gain into money and then buy whatever you want at Jerusalem, or the place where the Lord would choose to put his name. And the third I gave unto them to whom it was meet, as Deborah, my father's mother, so his grandmother, had commanded me, because I was left an orphan by my father. Right. So at some point his father basically wasn't there. Now, whether his father died or his father just left or whatever the case was, we know that he ended up growing up, you could say, with his grandmother for that sake. So she raised him in the right way. Furthermore, when I was come to the age of a man, I married Anna of mine own kindred, and I begat of her Tobias. And when we were carried away captives to Nineveh, all my brethren and those that were of my kindred did eat of the bread of the Gentiles. So once they were carried, captive, they basically they ate whatever was there. They didn't stress a good portion of them of, because the heathens or the Gentiles, they didn't follow our dietary laws. But see, Tobit was a very particular man when it came to adhering to the ways of the Most High. So as he says here, but I kept myself from eating, right, when it would come to abominable things, because I remembered God with all my heart. And the Most High gave me grace and favor before Enemeser, so that I was his purveyor. So now he mentions Enemeser. He's going to mention the Enemeser, or the proper transliteration to be Shalmaneser, a couple of times, but you gotta sort of use the context to find out which king in secular history does it make sense for this to be referring to. So even though it doesn't say it directly, this in verse 13, this Enemeser would make sense to be actually Shalmaneser the fifth, okay, who Tobit says here, or Tiglath-Pileser. It could be any one of them, right? But it says here, before Enemeser, so one of those Assyrian kings, who, so that I was his purveyor. And a purveyor is basically one who, like, make sure that your stuff is stocked, right? They purchase the things that are needed and so on and so forth. In fact, let's type that in here. Purveyor. A person who sells or deals in particular goods. Right, like a provider or a supplier, right? As it says, a vendor, seller. And it says here, and I went into Media and left in trust with Gabiel, the brother of Gabrius at Rages, a city in Media, 10 talents of silver. So Tobit was making good money. And 10 talents is a lot. Okay, a talent alone is a lot. So 10 talents is a lot of silver. You can look that up. And now when Enemesser was dead, Sennacherib his son reigned in his stead, whose estate was troubled, that I could not go into Media. Now, as we read in secular history, right, Sennacherib was not the son of Shalmaneser. Right, he was the son of Sargon II. So that's why I mentioned that here when it says Enemesser, you know, you can't like just because it looks like it says Shalmaneser, just like in the scriptures it says Ahasuerus. Which one is it? You got to use the verses to decipher. Now, a couple of scenarios here could be that this in verse 15, this Enemesser here is referring to Sargon, right? Sargon II, which reigned for a period of time after Shalmaneser V. Okay, and his son was Sennacherib, who actually reigned after him. Okay, and let me see what I forgot what the other possibility was, but basically these are just, you know, it's not the biggest thing to dwell upon, right? Because at the end of the day, it's referring to one of these Assyrian kings. Okay, but just when you look at secular history to try and make a bit of sense out of it, it would make sense that Sennacherib here, being the son, as it says, his son reigned in his stead. It would make sense that this Enemesser would be Sargon II. Okay, so going along with that, or that logic, the first Enemesser we read about being Tiglath-Pileser the third, and then Tobit serving as purveyor or provider or supplier to Enemesser, because we know after Tiglath-Pileser came Shalmaneser V. He reigned for a period of time. He ended up dying. And then came Sargon II. He reigned also for a period of time. And then after him came Sennacherib. Okay, so these Enemessers that are mentioned here could be attributed to those, right? To Shalmaneser V. And then after he dies, Sargon II. And then after he dies, Sennacherib is the one who comes to reign, which was actually the son of Sargon. So it says here that when Sennacherib, Salakia, came to power, things got so bad that he couldn't go into Media. So he had that money that was with Gabriel, but it was there with him in Media. And in the time of Enemesser, I gave alms to my brethren and gave my bread to the hungry and my clothes. So once again, this Enemesser here we'll just attribute this to one of the Assyrian kings before Sennacherib, because here is Sennacherib, but that's explicitly lets you know, okay, who Sennacherib is. But he's saying basically before Sennacherib came up to power or came into to reign, beforehand this was his custom, right, where he would give alms to his brethren, right, and bread to the hungry, because we were, at least the northern kingdom here, were captives, right? You were in a foreign land. So Tobit did his best to look out for his kinsfolk. It says, and my clothes to the naked. And if I saw any of my nation dead or cast about the walls of Nineveh, I buried him. And if the king Sennacherib had slain any when he was come and fled from Judea, I buried them privately. And this is referring to when Sennacherib came there, tried to come against Jerusalem. And the Lord sent the angel to slay 185,000 of his men. And then he ended up having to flee back to Assyria. So when he came here, as it says, as Tobit is going into, for in his wrath he killed many bodies, but the bodies were not found when they were sought for of the king. So when he came, he took his anger out on the Israelites that were in Assyria. And Tobit ended up burying those bodies. So when they went to look for the bodies, he said, of the dead Israelites, for whatever reason, they couldn't find it. And when one of the Ninevites went and complained of me to the king, that I buried them and hid myself, understanding that I was sought for to be put to death, I withdrew myself for fear. So you had somebody who, a Ninevite, who basically said, yo, this guy Tobit is burying all the dead bodies of the Israelites you kill. Okay. And then maybe Sennacherib didn't want them to have honorable deaths. He just wanted their corpse to lay out there and rot. And so when he heard that, he wanted to kill Tobit, but Tobit fled. Then all my goods were forcibly taken away. Neither was there anything left me beside my wife Anna and my son Tobias. So basically he was stripped of all his riches, all his stuff was confiscated. And there passed not 55 days before 2 of his sons killed him. So within the span of about 55 days. And this is in secular history, right? The death of Sennacherib and in the scriptures, where he went to worship in his temple and his sons committed parricide. So they killed him. And they fled into the mountains of Ararat. And Sarchedonus, which is referring to Esarhaddon in secular history, his son reigned in his stead, who appointed over his father's accounts and over all his affairs Achiacharus, my brother, Aniel's son. So Achiacharus was a relative of Tobit. And when Esarhaddon came up into power, he set him up over all of his affairs. And Achiacharus entreating for me, I returned to Nineveh. So basically he put in a good word for Tobit, and Tobit was able to return back. Now Achiacharus was cupbearer and keeper of the signet, and the signet is basically like the king's authority, what he uses to sign off on certain decrees and matters, and steward and overseer of the accounts. And Sarchedonus appointed him next unto him. So he basically made him second in command. And he was my brother's son. And your brother's son, right, is your nephew. And that brings us to the end of the book of Tobit, the first chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rechak Kodesh. Until next time, Shalom.